do we like? Would you like us to guide you with some questions at first, or?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit. So yeah, that would be, I think, more natural if someone's like asking questions or just, I don't know, guiding the whole thing a little bit. Because I will be alone here today. Linus will not join us because normally he doesn't really do the talking. And I guess that he's busy. He works in this. He's working at the moment in this new location. Building the new brewery basically. So he's doing something really important also. Yeah.
So you're like Jay and Silent Bob, because Jay used to wear a cap as well.
Yeah, I just tend to like wearing caps, and it's actually it's Poyola cap I'm wearing today.
All right.
But maybe maybe I'll start actually even before like your topics even before from your brewery.
Mm-hmm.
So like a Lithuanian brewing tradition as such.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back like a long time, and when in Estonia, basically like Soviet time, and like so we kind of destroyed everything what we had locally. Maybe very little was left in islands. Then in Lithuania, still like you have quite a lot of traditional brewing still left. So I don't know. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that part of Lithuanian background as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, the thing is, I mean, I'm not maybe right person to talk about it, because there are other people that are way more focused on it than I am, honestly. But yeah, I would say that the problem with Soviet times and Lithuanian brewing tradition is that during those Soviet times, we still had that tradition, but it sort of went in a really bad way, sometimes, because I don't know, it looks like the whole society started drinking a lot more than they used to, and this brewing thing, it just became a cheap way to create alcohol instead of create something out of tradition with respect to the ingredients, to the process that you're doing. It just more in Soviet times, it just became a cheap way to produce booze and get wasted. So these countryside brewers, they started putting all sorts of crazy ingredients into their beers, like sugar, for example, and I don't know about your countryside brewers, but about our countryside, brewing tradition and those brewers, we have this like funny saying that talking about this countryside brews, like one glass is not enough and two glasses is already too much, and you're rolling under the floor, because under the table, sorry. Because basically it's these I don't know, countryside beers are more associated with like really strong high ABV beers that are brewed for people with shitty lives, in order to get wasted. So that's why when we started Sakiškių, and when we started as a home brewers, even before the Sakiškių, when we started as a home brewers, I think that all these new home brewers, they sort of were a bit shy about that countryside brewing tradition, and they tend to look the other way, try to be like really modern and not to repeat the same bad mistakes, So that is the thing. But of course, not everything died out, and we have some interesting brewing traditions that were saved by these old brewers. And unfortunately, some of these secrets are going to be taken to their graves, I guess, because some of them are not willing to share the whole details about the whole procedure, how they do things. But yeah, I think it's pretty common to the whole Nordic region of Europe. These countryside beers are mostly not boiled. So basically, you just you do your mashing, you lauter, then you not boil it. You ferment it in really high temperatures with some strange yeast cultures that like warm temperatures and that are capable of fermenting your wort over a night, for example. And you do not boil your hops. Also, what you do is called hop tea. So you boil your hops. You do not boil your hops in your wort. You boil it, or maybe you take like a separate portion of your wort, like I don't know, and like a huge pot or something, and boil your wort. Sorry, and boil your hops there, and then bring it back to the main wort, or boil your hops in water. And I think that is also because like equipment was pretty rare, like proper equipment, and pretty expensive, I would say, because you cannot really boil your wort in a wooden container, because most of this countryside brewing was done in wooden containers, and you cannot really boil your wort in a wooden container, and you do not have a huge stainless steel vessel to do in order to do that. So you boil your hops in a separate smaller container and then bring it back to the main wort. But one of the really interesting beer styles and pretty authentic, I would say, beer styles that we have in Lithuania as Lithuanian countryside brewing tradition is beer style called Keptinis. And I think that you can find a lot of information about it online. And again, we have to be grateful to this person. His name is Lars Marius Garshol. He's Norwegian guy, and he collected a lot of information about different brewing traditions in northern part of Europe, and Lithuania is also under his radar. In his field. He even released. He's soon to release the book about it. I mean, not just Lithuania, but the other countries also, but mostly Northern Europe. And you can find a lot of information about Keptinis beer style there. So what Keptinis is, and I just want to tell you that we also did it in our brewery as a collaboration with Italian brewery called Birrificio Italiano. What's interesting about it is basically that you create this really dark beer, like porter dark beer, or like really brown ale, out of pale malts entirely, mostly Pilsner malt. So how you do it is you do a mash as usual, pretty usual standard mashing procedure. And then when the conversion is over, I mean, when all of these starches are converted into sugars, basically you scoop your mash out, you put it into small baking trays, and you bake it in your oven, mostly wood-fired oven, especially in rural areas. That was the only option, wood-fired oven. So you bake your mash, and what happens, it caramelizes because you do it in really high temperatures for extended periods of time, like 4 hours or so, in screamingly hot oven, like 300 degrees sometimes, like temperatures that you would normally bake your pizza in. So what happens, this mash, it caramelizes, it browns, it sometimes even the top of it, the top layer of it burns. And then when that baking procedure is completed, you lauter that as you do it, well, normally. And then you get really dark wort out of it, and a lot of dextrins in it also, because of the caramelization process that happens over the time that it spends in a wood-fired oven. and then you get this porter-like beer out of that wort. So that is a funny way of brewing. I mean, you use just Pilsner malt or some other pale malt, and then you get like porter dark beer out of it. That is quite sweet and really rich in dextrins, you know. So I know that Lars Marius Garšol gives quite a lot of information about it on his upcoming new book. And Americans actually started looking into well, I know that his blog, this Lars Marius Garšol I told you about, he also has his blog online that is really popular with brewers around the world and beer enthusiasts, whatever you name it. So a lot of American people read it also, and so this Captain's beer style became quite. I know people in America started being interested in it. They started experimenting, started brewing. I've read some reviews. Some people were not really successful. I mean, maybe they burned their they burned their mash too much while cooking it, and they had really astringent flavors. But others had more success with it. So, well, that is interesting. I mean, that people in the other part of the globe started brewing this funny Lithuanian beer style because of this Norwegian guy who wrote about it. Yeah, that is funny.
But I understand that one of the very important features of Lithuanian countryside brewing is the yeast, local yeast that is being kept for years and years in grandmother's well or somewhere in a cellar, or like maybe even more than 10 years, but hundreds of years. At least.
Yeah, we have a few examples. Well, again, the funny thing is that at the very beginning, when these countryside brewers, one really famous lady is called Aldona Udrienė. She's a lady brewer. So when she started talking about that specific yeast that she uses, everyone was like, people didn't really believe her, because you know what these countryside brewers, especially older generation, what they do is they tell you a lot of bullshit sometimes. So when she started saying that this yeast is capable of fermenting your wort over a night, and that she got that yeast from her granddad or her granddad, whatever the story is, people were a bit skeptical about it. So there was someone who convinced her to give a sample of that yeast and sent it to a laboratory. I can't tell you where, maybe Canada, as far as my memory serves. And they did research, and apparently, that strain is pretty unique. They couldn't find specific examples in the yeast bank that they had available, and that, as far as I know, that may be like a combination of 2 or 3 different yeast strains. Maybe it just mutated over time, because she says that she uses it for a lot of years. And the problem with this countryside beers and brewers and procedures is that they do not pay too much attention on the cleaning procedures. So that is actually possible that yeast, I don't know, mutated, or it caught some other microorganisms that were just around, something happened. But we have quite a few, we have, I don't know, maybe 3 different yeast strains that are popular amongst those countryside brewers, especially the most popular ones. And apparently that yeast is pretty unique. I mean, more than two examples were examined in yeast laboratories, and the results were that this was not known before as a separate strain. It might be like a mix of strains, or as far as I know, one strain is pretty unique. It's called, it's even available for home brewers or commercial users also. It's called Sanalis, as far as I remember, Sanalis, and Polish lab called Fermentum Mobile, they produce it. So they got a sample of it. They got a sample from this countryside brewer, this really respected countryside brewer, Julius Simonaitis. I visited his brewery a few times. He brews just for himself and his family. He doesn't brew commercially, but yeah, he was telling that he has this specific yeast strain. So it was examined, and again, apparently it's pretty unique. So this Polish laboratory, they cleaned it from the rest of microorganisms that were there, like different bacteria and stuff like that. And you can buy that strain for your home brewing needs, or even commercially. We did a few fermentations with that. So what I wanted to say, what is unique about those yeast strains, it pretty much resembles there's this popular quake thing going around, this quake yeast from Norway. So it pretty much resembles that in a way that it ferments super fast. It ferments basically overnight in like 18, it's actually capable of fermenting your wort, like normal gravity wort, in 18 hours. Yeah, if you give it right conditions, it likes to ferment warm, sometimes like 35 degrees Celsius. Again, we're talking quake temperatures here. It is capable of fermenting your normal gravity wort over a night. So it works really fast. And people who did research on that strain said that somehow it looks like that strain, I don't know why, because of its, I know that yeast, well, yeast is always alive. Yeast is like a, small animal, microorganism, mushroom, whatever you call it. So basically it just tries to survive so fast that it ferments like in 18 hours, and then it goes dormant straight away. It flocculates towards the bottom of the fermentation vessel. So it just it behaves that way because those microorganisms, that yeast, it just tries to prevent itself from dying. It just tries to survive that way, ferment really fast and go dormant straight away, and form this really nice layer on the bottom of your fermentation vessel. So maybe it's over a time, it just learned how to do it. That's funny, but that is actually possible, that yeast is somehow managed to learn how to do it over those long years. It just somehow.
So it is intelligent yeast.
Yeah, but the thing that, all the yeast are pretty much the same.
But you mentioned about the sanitation issue is like a small, like countryside breweries. So, like what I understand is that actually the best way to drink this traditional Lithuanian beer is actually to visit breweries, because even if you get it in Vilnius from tap, it might already be too old.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like, the shelf life is super short.
Yeah, the normal. Well, if you focused on this like really traditional countryside beers, the normal lifespan of that beer is like up to 1 week, and the fresher you drink it, more you enjoy it. So yeah, I think the best place to drink it is maybe in the brewery, or if you buy it from the brewery, like directly from the brewery. Yeah, but there are a few bars in Vilnius that are focused on these countryside beers, and Šnekutis is really popular bar, just in case you will, I'm just giving you this information just in case this whole virus situation goes down and the borders are open and you can visit. We will start going abroad, so maybe some people will come to Vilnius, and if you want to try this authentic Lithuanian countryside beers, so the best way is Šnekutis. So it's not a bar. Šnekutis is like a chain of bars. At the moment, they have 3 different bars in Vilnius city center, and you can find more info about it online. There are many reviews about those places. So yeah, Šnekutis bars are focused on those countryside beers. So this is probably the best place to taste them, because they order those beers, I think, twice a week, sometimes even. Well, especially in peak season, for example, in summertime, I guess they order those beers twice a week, and then you know that you're drinking them fresh, and you're getting the best possible experience. Yeah, because you were right. Due to sanitation processes, it goes those proper like countrysides, those what people consider authentic countryside beers, they go bad in really short period of time. And these countryside brewers, they have this excuse. They always say that, oh, we do not pasteurize or filter our beer. That's why it goes bad in like 2 days, because that is natural beer. You cannot keep it longer, if your beer is unfiltered and unpasteurized, and it stays longer for some reason. They are always suspicious, oh, you put something into it, you can, the live beer, it cannot stay fresh for long amounts of time. Well, that's what they say. So, well, that is why, as I mentioned before, when we started as home brewers, and I know that many home brewers, they went through that, we try to, I know we are always curious about this modern brewing, not about countryside brewing, because of these, well, crappy things that they sometimes spread, all these, lies and those funny sayings that your beer is natural, that's why it goes bad in 2 days. Somehow we just try to go against it, and do other things that we are interested in.
So when did you start actually with your own brewery, and what's your brewery's short history?
Yeah, that's right. Me and Linus, we started this company. Actually, Linus started this company. This is his company, and I joined it a little bit later. When he invited me to join him, both of us, we started as home brewers, and we have no formal education in brewing. Neither of us has. So yeah, we meet each other in Vilnius home brewing community, like this club. It has meetings once a month, and that's how we met. That's how I met Linus. That's how we know each other, basically, from this Vilnius home brewing club. And my short story is, well, I know that Linus got interested about brewing when he visited, I guess, one of the small countryside brewers, and he started, well, he was just curious. So is it, I know, it looks like it's not too difficult to make your own beer. So he started doing it, and he sort of liked it, and he continued on doing it. And my story is, sorry, my mouth is dry, so I'm going to open a beer, and I suggest you do the same in case you're sitting there without anything to sip.
Yep.
And my story is that in 2010, I spent around 1 year in UK just after my studies, and I got a job in a pub, like in a proper old pub in the city of Birmingham. I remember it even today. It's called Canalside Cafe. Just in case you visit Birmingham someday, there's this really romantic place on the border of the canal. On the very edge of the canal, where the narrow boats go. It's called Canalside Cafe, and they had a lot of real ales on drafts, on hand pumps. And all those real ales were like, they were different. I mean, the whole way you serve them is totally different from keg beer. But not just that. I mean, when I got a job, what I knew from like my study days or something, that beer is beer, like, I don't know, this pale beverage that you drink to get wasted, to get boozy, you know.
It's not entirely wrong, right?
Yeah, and some of their beers, like, it was really dark. The other beer was not too dark, but it wasn't pale at the same time. So that's how I started learning things, you know, that beer is not just beer. Beer is pretty difficult beverage. It can be, you know, well, you have stouts, you have porters, you have pale ales, you have all those different ingredients in it. I started learning about hops, you know, why these pale beers, they smell that nice. I'm not used to it. Why this beer smells like pineapples, the other one smells like flowers, you know. So I started educating myself about it pretty naturally, because I just didn't want to spend my days over there just, you know, doing lousy service. I wanted to know something about the product that I'm responsible of. So I started educating myself, and when I got back to Lithuania, the beer selection was still pretty bad. I mean, nowadays you can go to supermarket and you have all those, well, I know, maybe not too interesting beers, but you have an option. You can choose from I know, you can buy an IPA or something, you can buy stout, you know, in regular supermarket. Back in those days, these were like mostly local lagers on the shelves. So yeah, so that's how I got into home brewing, you know, because I had these memories about those beers in UK, and I wanted to drink something interesting. So that's how I got into home brewing. I started reading about it because at the very beginning, well, I had an idea about the brewing procedures, but I didn't know that it is relatively easy to do it at home, because from a side, it looked like a super complicated, super technical process that you need a lot of equipment to do it, but apparently not. You just need a plastic container where you can ferment your worts, and a larger vessel where you can boil it, more or less. That's what you need in order to create your own beer. So yeah, that's how I got, step by step, I got into home brewing. And when I started sourcing my ingredients, I found out about this online shop that sells ingredients here in Vilnius, and they also have community with other people that are curious about the same thing, that are into same thing. So that's how I ended up in Vilnius homebrewing community, in that club. And I started educating myself even more, started deeper and deeper into brewing, and I met Linas there. And right at that time, I think I got a job in this brewery called Dundulis, this Lithuanian brewery that I think that beer nerds know about. Dundulis brewery from Lithuania. So Dundulis is, these guys are famous for starting basically this craft beer movement in Lithuania, I would say, because they were the first guys who started brewing stouts, IPAs, and this Humulupu IPA that is still brewed by Dundulis today, one of their most successful beers. It was first ever released commercial IPA in Lithuania. So I started working for that brewery as a salesperson in Vilnius region. I was selling their beers to Horeca sector, different cafes and bars around. And, you know, but at the same time, I was not really, I mean, this wasn't my dream job. This was as close as I can get to the job in a brewery. and I was still home brewing a lot at the time back in the days. And when Linus offered me a position at Sakiškės, when he started doing this company, when he started the whole thing with Sakiškės, he invited me to join him, and I said hell yeah straight away, because I always wanted to brew, you know. Didn't really want to be a salesperson, but that was really neat position back in the days. So yeah, that's how I started him, and that's how we started the Sakiškės thing together in 2000, in 25th of April 2015. So that's funny, yeah. More than 5 years.
So it's
more than 5
almost
years.
exactly 5 years. It's
yeah.
anniversary, actually.
That's why I stopped a little bit and checked the date. You know, what's the date for today? Yeah, it's. I think on April 25th we got our commercial brewing license. That's the thing. So. Maybe about that brewery, about how we started.
Can I ask before you continue with the brewery? How hard is it to get your own beers to sell in let's say grocery stores? You told before that actually some of like microbrewers are able to buy from local groceries. How hard is it to get your stuff to get on the shelves of your local groceries, or let's say worldwide? Do you have like any microbreweries or homemade brewed beers in Maxima or whatsoever?
We have some craft beers, some local craft beers on shelves of Rimi, but not. I think not the whole chain, but the largest ones. I'm not sure. Do you have Rimi in your? Yeah, I think you have Rimi, right?
It's one of the biggest. Yeah.
Yeah. So the largest Rimis in Lithuania are called hyper Rimis. Like hyper means that, well, the largest Rimi. So I think they sell local craft beers on those like largest shops, just in those largest shops, not in the smaller ones. So Rimi is more or less your only option to get on the shelves of like general supermarket. I think that maybe you can find some Genys brewing from Kaunas, which is the second largest Lithuanian city. I think that they sell their beers in Maxima also, but I'm not too sure about it. I may be lying. Yeah, but I don't know, for some reason, these huge supermarkets, these huge chains are not super interested in these things because, I don't know, obviously it's more expensive than usual stuff. And I think that Maxima has this separate shelf for like imported craft beers. So you can find like some Japanese beers there, Sierra Nevada, I guess sometimes, something like that. But yeah, well, yeah, so I know, well, the funny thing is that I cannot really tell you much about it because I don't think that we even tried hard to do it, honestly. Because when we started, our capacities are like not huge. At the moment, we package up to 6,000 liters of beer monthly. So you can imagine it's not a lot. Like 6,000 liters is not much, even in small brewery format.
Maybe you can show us your some pictures of your brewery also, and
I mean, like the story with me and Dennis is like first time when we went to like visited the brewery, we couldn't find it because it was it doesn't look really like a brewery from outside. It looks like a normal house or kind of like a house in a yard, small house in the yard.
A very cute one, very cute one.
Yeah. So the thing is, I wanted to tell about it. I'll find you some pictures. Also, so basically that brewery building was erected on Linus' land in a location where he lives. It's obviously called, well, the Sakiškių, the area where he lives is called Sakiškės, so it just represents the name of that location. So he erected that building on his land, just along to the building where he lives, along to his house, side by side. So it's pretty small. I mean, it's carcass house that he built over his holidays with his dad, specifically for the brewery. So it's just it's a little bit less than 80 square meters in total. So that's not a lot for a brewery, as you can imagine. Um,
When you say total, means like for 2 floors total?
yeah, we have 2 floors, and one floor is like 39 square meters, something like that. Oh yeah, I'm looking for those pictures of that cute little building. I cannot really find it. Yeah, here's one. Yeah, just give me a second. I'll share it with you on.
Is it normal in Lithuania to have that kind of small breweries, or is it like that? What's the goal? Is the goal to have a small one? You said there are plenty of 6-ton
Yeah.
capacity breweries, or is this just a start, or how is the situation in Lithuania? Because in Estonia, most of the breweries, they always want to get bigger, and then 6 tons, well, it's not enough, right? So you want to have a bigger one. You are pressing the government to pass the law to have bigger breweries with more taxes and so on. But how's the situation in Lithuania?
Yeah, even the small countryside breweries are larger than we are. I think that, well, not that I think, but I know for sure that we are the smallest production brewery in Lithuania, for sure. I mean, by saying production, by defining it as production brewery, I mean that we do not operate as a brew pub or something. We do not sell beer on premises. We have to package it and sell it someplace else. You know, we have to send it somewhere to the warehouse at the very beginning, and from the warehouse it goes to all these spots where we sell our beer, all the clients. So the other breweries are a bit larger, but I mean, those countryside breweries, they are not like way larger than we are. I would say they are still in a format of maybe packaging up to 20,000 liters monthly, something like that. Some of them larger, some of them smaller. And we do not have too many breweries. I mean, we have around 60 licenses issued for like commercial brewing. And it doesn't mean that all those licenses are operating, because once you get the license, you keep it as long as you want, even though your company is closed. Sometimes you still have that license. So it doesn't mean that we have 60 breweries in Lithuania. As far as I know, around 30 something, 35 up to 40 breweries operating at the moment. And the breweries that I would define as craft breweries, we have up to 10. Up to 10 from all those like 30 something. Yeah, so sorry, I lost your question. It was something about expansion, right?
The question was about like my question was about what's the average size of like microbrewery in Lithuania? Because you said you have like 2-ton boiling equipment, right? So my question was is it like your goal, or you're having a plan to have a bigger boiling and bigger more equipment?
Yeah, you know, it's difficult to tell you about the plans or something, because the thing is, when we started, it's really difficult to get a loan from the bank for a brewery in Lithuania. I don't know what's the situation in Estonia. I mean, it's easier once you get operating, and when you have something to show them that we sell this much and blah blah blah, and we have plans to sell that much next year, then you can get some loans, some money from the bank. But when you start as a startup company, it's almost impossible to get money for brewery. So we started with what we had, and we started small because we had money for small brewery. We didn't have money for like larger one. So when we started with this 500 liter brew house, this DEY brew house, basically not the proper professional one. And we started with 2 fermenters, 1,000 liter each. And then year after year, we acquired some more tanks. And at the moment we have 1,000 liter brew house, like professional brew house. I mean, not that one that we started in the early days. So starting small was not really like chosen by us, like logically. That was what we had to do if we wanted to do it, because we had limited amount of money, you know, for a start.
But maybe also the market. It's also like
yeah, of course,
of
course, yeah. That dictates its own situation. I mean, you are also limited to like how much beer you can sell, because someone has to buy it, someone has to pay money for it in order for you to survive and develop your business and then maybe expand it. The market was not, especially back in the days when we started, the market was not really prepared for it, I would say, because, you know, we started with low amounts of beer, and when you brew low amounts of beer, there is no way you can sell it cheap. And especially when you use those expensive ingredients, and it also like proper amounts of American hops in your IPAs. People were not really used to these high prices. So when we started, we were definitely the most expensive. We produced the most expensive beer in Lithuania. Today we have some competitors. But back in 2015, that was a bit, funny situation. People couldn't really understand why this beer is twice as expensive as they used to pay for the small bottle, you know.
What's the background note is like, actually, I think compared with Estonia, Sakiškių beers in Lithuania are not expensive. The thing is, just local beer is just extremely cheap.
What's the price of a small bottle actually in Lithuania? Like in Estonia, it's let's say between 2.5 to 4. Like maybe a bigger beers like the Tanker brews in 0.44 liter cans, then it's like €4. But like normal Pohjola beers, they are like 2 to 3. What's the price in Lithuania?
Well, I would say that if we are talking about, for example, this Hyperimi shop supermarket, they sell, I think they sell our beers for like also 2 something, but maybe a bit more expensive than, a bit more than 240, 220. I think it's closer to €3, like maybe 280 to 90, something like that, for a small bottle. And yeah, the other craft breweries sell it for pretty much the same price. I mean, if we talk about Genys Brewing or Kuro Aparatura or other breweries from Lithuania, the breweries that define themselves as like crafts, that use maybe more expensive ingredients, you know, than regular stuff. Yeah, it's closer to €3 maybe nowadays, something like that. Yeah, but people in general, people were used to buying used to getting their beer like really cheap. Those commercial lagers were relatively cheap, and I know I remember because I used to be in a band when I was a student. So sometimes we would go play in Riga, Latvia, for example. So I remember that beer was like always more expensive there, and that was, I don't know, strange. I mean, you are used to this like cheap booze, and then you go to Latvia, for example, and it's way more expensive. I mean, back in the days, I'm telling about, you know, situation maybe 10 years ago or something. Yeah, so people were used to getting their beer like really cheap, and then here we are selling this beer that tastes funny that is not something that they used to, and it's quite expensive. Yeah.
But you have been like very creative actually in the kind of different variety of beer styles you have covered in that small brewery. So maybe like, can you give like small overview about the brewing philosophy? Like what kind of beers did you set out to basically brew from the beginning? What was your mission?
Yeah, so yeah, I just want to ask about that picture. You can see it, right? So this is how the whole brewery looked back in the days, and it still looks the same way today. Yeah, now I'm just going to show you. Yeah, here I am. So I'll continue. Yeah, about stuff that we brew. So, well, I think it's pretty easy. It just came from the days of home brewing. You know, many home brewers that I know and that I knew from the older days, we all started with the same thing. I mean, we didn't want to brew. When you start brewing beer as a home brewer, you do not really want to start brewing like lager, or you do not start with just, I don't know, I'm gonna brew this pale ale. You know, you always start with something challenging, something that's, I don't know, you're curious about, something that you read about online. You know, you always try to push that limit a little bit further. Oh, I'm just gonna use this and that. I'm just gonna add this much hops in it and blah, blah, blah. So basically, I would define it as you try to brew something interesting, and you try to keep it as an interesting hobby for yourself, because what's the reason of brewing something simple? You can go to the supermarket and buy something simple, and you will not have to stand by the kettle for 8 hours and ferment it for 2 weeks and then package it. And I think that at the end of the day, it will be even cheaper than to brew it by yourself. So as a home brewer, you always start with something challenging. So same situation here. I mean, we started brewing something that was interesting for us. Something that you can learn something new from, you know, gain some more experience, blah, blah, blah. So we continued on doing the same thing in a brewery on a larger scale, because that was something that we were good at. We knew how to do it. I remember when we brewed our first, well, relatively simple lager. Of course, it's quite hoppy in comparison to the rest of the stuff that you can get in the supermarket. But when we started brewing like more simple recipes, it was a bit unusual for us. Even to brew this relatively simple lager was, well, I would say quite a challenge for us, because we were not used to do it. I mean, we were always try to overcomplicate things and do it and do something, you know, interesting, something that is interesting for us or might be interesting for people who pay a lot of money for your beer. And that was also one of the reasons, because again, you can find cheaper beers, but you won't necessarily find, like, I don't know, sour beetroot ale for the same price. You know, we couldn't really compete by pricing. We had to offer people something unusual, something that they are not used to. You know, we had to challenge them in a way also, in order to convince them to buy this beer, to pay money for it. So that's how it continued from the days of home brewing in this professional brewing field. We always try to do something interesting. And we do a lot of beers that it is sometimes difficult to call it a beer, you know, straight away. For example, this sour beetroot ale, you know, when people taste it, they say, well, I wouldn't describe it as beer. I wouldn't define it as beer, you know. Yeah, so we do a lot of these like funny brews, I would say. For example, again, getting back to this sour beetroot ale, I'm not sure about Estonia, but in Lithuania we have this soup called šaltibarščiai. It's really popular in summertime. It's basically called beetroot soup. So we try to mimic that soup with this beer. We try to, I don't know, overthink that soup recipe and create the beer out of it. So we did the sour beetroot ale, which is, well, it's not too sour, because normally when you do that cold beetroot soup, you lose kefir in it. So in order to mimic kefir, we soured this wort a little bit. Again, that milk, that kefir part in that soup was replaced by lactose in this beer. And of course, beetroots. We used a lot of natural unpasteurized beetroots juice in it. So we try to mimic that soup with this beer, and that is a lot of what we do at Sakiškių. We try to, I don't know, do these things that are difficult to call beer straight away. This gin tonic IPA and things like that. Yeah, we always try to, I don't know, be creative, and I think the most important thing is not about really being creative, but we try to surprise customers. We try to surprise people who are going to pay for it. And again, we do not have a huge amounts of beer that we produce, so we have to compete by brewing something interesting. Yeah, so we do it that way.
What are the beers you're personally most proud of?
The sour beetroot ale is super cool. I mean, I'm proud of it because of the reviews and people were really surprised with it, that, you know, it really reminds that soup, because, you know, it's really important when you put something on a label. Sometimes you cannot really taste it straight away in a beer. For example, like marshmallow IPA. Yeah, it's I know you can find some marshmallow character in it, but it doesn't taste like liquid marshmallow straight away in your mouth, you know. So you have to try to look for those nuances in it. And with this beer,
I'm having it, so it's I can find it.
Yeah, that's cool. But with this beer, it really tastes like that soup, and people are, you know, really surprised by it. That's why I'm pretty proud. And also this blackcurrant brewed ale that some of you had today, I've seen. Basically, what we do a lot also, because we are not tied to huge amounts, you know, we can do just one batch, like 1,000 liters, for example. So that is really good for places that want to have like their own beer or create their own beer with us. For example, that's why we do a lot of collabs with not other breweries, but other bars or restaurants. So there's this craft beer bar called Beer Library, or Alaus Biblioteka in Lithuanian. Here's their logo over here. So they approached us and they wanted to create something that would resemble wine, you know, like wine kind of beer. And they wanted to use something local, like local ingredients. So my idea was to create this brewed ale. In this beer, we use that enzyme that, have you heard about this brewed IPA that is popular nowadays? Well, recently, it's pretty popular beer style. Yeah, so what they do in it, they use this enzyme that lets the yeast to ferment that beer almost completely without any residual sugar left. And it tastes like bone dry, and it creates totally different mouthfeel. So we use the same enzyme used in brewed IPA. It's called amyloglucosidase, as far as I remember. We use that enzyme, and it led the beer to ferment this beer completely, like no residual sugar left. and we used blackcurrant in it, and we used it in a process called like maceration. Well, I'm not sure about the English term, but yeah, in Lithuanian it's maceracija, so I guess it's maybe maceration in English. So what it means, basically, you add your berries with whole skins, everything in it, in your beer. And from those skins of blackcurrant, you let it sit in that beer for, I don't know, a week or 2 weeks. Well, depends on the results. You always taste it and see how it looks. But basically what it does, it drags a lot of color from the skins of those berries. That's why this beer is, yeah, I can show you. Just give me a minute. This beer is like really, it resembles red wine, doesn't it? A little bit, the color. And that whole color, it came from basically the skins of blackcurrant. So yeah, it's more like a hybrid between beer and wine, really, like blackcurrant wine. Of course, it's carbonated to really high levels. We wanted to carbonate it more like a champagne than a beer. And I'm also really proud of it. We did a few test batches, and when we did this commercial batch, it was way better than we expected, and actually way better than test batches that we did before. I don't know why, maybe because of maybe these blackcurrants, they had larger surface contact with the rest of the wort in larger fermenter, and the color is way nicer than in these test batches. And we also used some aronia juice in it. That's why it has some tannins, because normally these aronia berries are like, it's pretty tannic. So it gave this beer some tannins that, and I would say it really resembles, well, in a way it resembles just dry red wine. And I'm really proud of it also. And the reviews were nice, and people were also really curious about it just because of the description, the whole procedures that we did to it, and of course the final result was really pleasing.
You have also done quite many kind of interesting collaboration beers, like with Latvia Maldaguns, Estonian Tanker, even with Sori.
Yeah, sorry. Look, I see that my computer is almost dead, so I'm gonna run get a cable. All right, I didn't connect it to electricity.
Yeah. Go ahead. I will go and run and get a beer.
Yeah, so beer getting a moment. I'm just sharing like what I'm having right now. I'm having actually a Japanese beer called Deeks Rice, which is like my first ever, actually, a rice session IPA. From a small Japanese brew pub, actually run by my friend Davido. So like it's, I think it's like homemade label, because they just started doing it, bottling only during this Corona thing.
Yeah, I'm back.
All right.
Yeah. So what was the question about
the
other collabs?
Yeah. So what are your kind of most interesting collab beers you have made, and like and when you do collab, like what does it actually add? is it kind of different from the usual creation, or is it like the same?
One that comes to my mind straight away is this collab with Birrificio Italiano that I told you about earlier, this Captain's beer style. Because, man, it's really labor intensive, that thing, to brew Captain's beer, because we have this wood-fired oven outside our brewery. This well, it looks like more like Italian pizza oven, basically. So we managed to bake just 1/3 of the mash that we needed for the whole batch, and it took 16 hours, I guess, because that oven is not too large. It's not too big. So it took us like the whole day and part of the night to do it. And then we brewed beer next day. Well, we prepared that baked malt in advance the day before. It took shitloads of time, and then we brewed next day. And these Italian guys from Birrificio Italiano, they brought their own Italian hops with them because they were also participating in Vilnius Beer Festival, I guess, that time. And they had to send their beers here to Vilnius. So along with the beer, they sent those huge packs with Italian hops in it. I mean, those were not pallets. They sent pressed cones, the hop cones, the whole cones basically, not pallets. And it was like this huge packs because I think they sent like 40 kilos of it. And I don't know, well, maybe you're familiar with hops. Once those hop cones are dried, they are pretty light in weight. So you can imagine that when you need 40 kilos of it, it's pretty huge pile. So they sent those packs with Italian hops in it, and we used it in that beer also in our lautering tank. Basically, we created this hop back kind of thing out of our lautering tank. So this hop back means that you run hot worts at the end of the boiling process. You run your hot worts through those hop cones, like really short contact time. In order not to extract too much bitterness, you just need aroma and flavor. So we used those Italian hops in it, and this was Italy grown Cascade, and Italian variety called, sorry, I can't remember the exact name of that Italian variety. Something Italian, I don't know, Ella, Stella, Emily, Emilia, something like that. So that, well, it was pretty specific. I mean, the super long process of creating it and these strange ingredients. And yeah, so it was really rich in caramelly, toasty flavors from baking the mash. And at the same time, it was really citrusy and fruity from those Italy grown hops. And yeah, and it took 2 days to brew that one batch of beer. That's why I remember it pretty well. And the other one, out of the other collaborations with other breweries, I would say it was with Sakiškių Brewery from Estonia. And beer that we brewed was not actually beer. It was this hard seltzer kind of thing. I don't know, maybe you're familiar with it or heard something about it. It's hard seltzer is basically, well, it is really popular in States now. I mean, talking about the whole beer market in United States, basically the beer consumption is declining steadily, and this hard seltzer, it just went to the very top straight away. It was introduced by these large breweries a few years back. So it's basically the sugar, water, neutral yeast. So you create the alcohol out of sugar and water, and then you add back sweetening to it sometimes you do not back sweeten it, but what you add is like you add some extract to it, like fruit extracts, berry extracts, blah, 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 something to, well, in order to have, you want it to have some aromas, flavors, not just fermented sugar, because it just tastes like water and booze, basically. So for some reason, it became really popular in the United States, this whole hard seltzer thing. And especially amongst younger drinkers, like in young audience, students, blah, blah, blah. I mean, like college students, not school students, hopefully. So it's really popular. And the funny thing about it is that some brewers are really somehow in pain because of it. I mean, all the brewers have their own opinion about it, especially in talking about craft breweries. Some of the people, they try to stay away from it, like completely. It's more like a, I don't know, fundamental idea of not to do it because it's just sugar and water and something that you use for flavor, so we're not gonna do it, like never ever. And some brewers are started experimenting with it, like adding some real berries, real fruits, not just extract, not something artificial, and started brewing those artisanal hard seltzers. I don't know, let's put it that way. So I read a lot about it online, and I also listened to a lot of podcasts about brewing from United States. And as this is really hot topic today, this hard seltzer, we thought that it would be interesting to do it with Tanker Brewery here as a collab in Vilnius. So we did it a few months back, and actually, yeah. So as I mentioned before, it's basically sugar and water, and you ferment it with neutral yeast, and that's how you get booze and base for everything. And then we added red currant and beetroot juice to it also. And well, what we got is this really nice tasting beetroot lemonade that has 5% by alcohol in it. So yeah, I know it was funny experience, and it was also really nice to do something that you heard a lot about, and especially all those mixed opinions that you heard a lot of mixed opinions about it, you know, from all those brewers in United States. As I mentioned, some of them, well, they swear on their mother's graves that they're not gonna do it, like never ever. Some of them do it. So I thought, well, that would be curious to do it here in Lithuania. So yeah, we did it with Tanker. And actually, the second batch that we did later is way better. We used some more red currant in it, and you can definitely feel it. That it was way more intense than the first batch. But again, you learn along the way with some things. It was the first time that we did this hard seltzer, and I know that for Tanker also they tried to do it as a test batch, as a pilot batch, and they were not really they didn't like the results that they got, but they were pretty happy with this commercial batch that we did together. So yeah, I don't know about Estonia, about how people react to this hard seltzer kind of thing. I got questioned by this Lithuanian homebrewer, what's the difference between this hard seltzer and something that large brewery is called cider? Because it's pretty much the same. We have those products in the market. This, I don't know, fizz, however it's called, blah blah blah. You know, it's they present it as cider, but it's mostly fermented sugar with some extracts to it added to it. So it's well, that resembles this hard seltzer movement happening in States nowadays. Yeah, but again, it was funny and nice to try to do something, you know, and especially this really hot topic today. So.
Yeah, I mean, like basically, like we saw like how small the brewery was, and like, but you have also been in quite many foreign markets, well, including Estonia, as we know. But how many foreign countries actually have been selling your beer to, and like, what has been the kind of international response or kind of feedback?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about the exact number of markets we're in, but again, you have to understand we're not talking about like huge amounts here. It's mostly sold by small amounts in like boutique shops and bars. So yeah, well, I would say up to 10 foreign countries on our list. But again, it's not like, it doesn't mean that every single month we sell our beer in some foreign countries. Yes, sometimes it happens. Yeah, regularly we sell in Germany is one of the larger clients. Germany, Sweden, Finland also. Yeah, Finland is doing relatively good. Even in the days of quarantine, we were actually, I think we sent a pallet to Finland. So that is funny. People were still willing to buy something, you know, in the days of quarantine and total lockdown. Yeah, and sorry again. I started answering and I forgot the
Second
rest
part
of the question.
was the feedback. Yeah.
Oh, about the feedback. Yeah, I think that, well, people are curious because they are not really familiar seeing Lithuanian beer, you know, on their shelves, because mostly what you get from Lithuania as an, well, export beer is mostly brewed by large breweries like, well, major lagers, you know, that's what you normally see from Lithuania. So people are maybe, you know, curious when they see this craft beer from Lithuania. I think they're willing to try. And yeah, well, talking about feedback, I know I do not try to, well, I try to stay away from things like Untapped and other platforms, but I check them from time to time, like regularly. So I guess that at the moment, I've seen statistics that more than 10,000 people rated our beer. And the average score is 3.6 or something. So I don't know, I would say we're doing pretty good as unfamiliar brewery from Lithuania, brewing interesting beers, you know, beers that we brew by challenging ourselves sometimes in order to create something unique and something that we haven't do before.
What is the Corona impact you're feeling? Like you said, you're still kind of even selling to Finland a little bit, but I also know that you started online shop, for example, by yourself. So it's it has shifted a little bit, right? The market.
Yeah, of course. I mean, at the moment we see a huge decline in sales in general because, you know, people are doing some other things right now, maybe not necessarily focusing on drinking, you know, craft beers. So we stopped producing new beers. Well, when this whole lockdown was, well, when it happened, I mean, when this lockdown started, we brewed a few beers, but then after the first week, we stopped brewing. And mostly we were focused on packaging something that we already have prepared in fermentation or packaging tanks. We tried not to buy any new ingredients. We tried to use something that we had on hand that we already paid for. So we tried to use that and package beers that we had in fermentation vessels. And then I'm on holiday for I think that is my 4th week that I'm on holiday officially. So we stopped production. And yeah, we started doing some other things. So we focused on this e-shop, because back in the older days, I mean, before the quarantine, before the whole situation, it just looked too difficult. And especially with this situation from government in Lithuania, 4 years back, people voted and we elected this government that is really anti-alcohol. And this was one of their main slogans, that we are going to be like anti-alcohol Nazis. And we have this healthcare minister who is like, I mean, he's well, I don't know, difficult to describe it, but he's like anti-alcohol Nazi, like. So the whole alcohol industry, not just craft beer breweries, but the whole industry, seen some really radical bans, like total ban on publicity, and that's, yeah, and even the Facebook was forbidden technically. So that's why you can see a lot of major Lithuanian breweries, like macro breweries. For example, the larger one is Švyturys Group. So they changed their name on Facebook to Švyturys Non-Alcoholic. So what they can promote is just non-alcoholic beer. And a lot of other major breweries did the same thing. All of them focused on promoting like their non-alcohol range, and they started experimenting a lot with non-alcoholic products. And actually, they released quite a few new non-alcoholic products to the market. That is funny shift actually, and funny thing to see. But we, as a brewery, I don't know, we still have this excuse that we export a lot to other markets. So that's why we still do some, I don't know, publicity on Facebook, but the larger breweries, they do not really do it. We still have this excuse, and as I mentioned, that we export and we work as a export brewery mostly. So I know we were good. But I know that other brewery that tried doing the same trick, they got fined, and now they have to pay that fine. Now they have to pay that fine, but now they are in court with this department of this like anti-alcohol department that is dealing with the situation. So yeah, situation has got, well, pretty difficult, and especially I can't imagine like these new startups, like new breweries coming to the market. How are they going to promote themselves? How are they going to let people know that they do something? Well, that's interesting, because when we started with all the government, and the situation was still okay. So, you know, I hope that we managed to get our fan base together, you know, right before those days of total ban on alcohol publicity. But yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, you will have elections quite soon, or
yeah, and I'm not
for the parliament.
Yeah,
or maybe there will be a change.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it is going to turn out, because honestly, before the quarantine, before this whole situation, before the virus situation hit us, the statistics was really bad for this government that we have now. I mean, people were not really happy with their decisions eventually. But when this whole quarantine, well, not quarantine, but when this whole virus situation hit us, you know, they were the ones that started offering decisions, you know, how to battle it, how to deal with it. And apparently their popularity started getting back into the really good shape again, because they are responsible for, you know, they are decision makers, and people see them as, you know, people who battle with the situation. And I guess that at the end of the day, they might end up as sort of local heroes, you know, for sorting things out. So I'm not totally sure how it is going to work out. We know that, yeah, I know that election date is already official. I think it's 11th of October this year. So in autumn, yeah, we're gonna elect new government. So we'll see. It's going to be like new government or same anti-alcohol government. And I think that if they're getting the second term, they probably grown their muscles. They gain some new muscles again, and maybe we'll introduce some new bans on something, you know, or maybe even more strict regulation of the alcohol industry. Well, we'll see. I don't know.
I mean, in Estonia, we also had something similar, like, but it's over now, and excise duties are also gone down a little bit. But I remember, like, from Lithuania, that when those restrictions were started, it even, what happened was kind of foreign journals who had which had any alcohol advertisements inside. You had like government kind of government unit, which was the ladies basically like taking those pages out or kind of
or maybe cover those pages with like a blank piece of paper. But then it was really chaotic. But then later they changed it, that if that for example I know this thing that you're saying, that you're telling about it, if it's imported, like if that book or something or that magazine was imported from a foreign country, then it is okay if there's an alcohol publicity in it. But the ones that are published locally, the total ban on alcohol publicity is on, and you cannot really do it. So what I wanted to say, I slowly drifted to other things that I wanted to say. So in that background, in those days of like total ban on alcohol publicity and blah blah blah, and this strict fight against alcohol producers, it was like it would be too difficult to run e-shop, although it was technically available. I mean, it's not forbidden to run e-shop and sell alcohol, but it wasn't really popular. We had maybe 2 e-shops that were selling wine exclusively, and it wasn't really popular to have e-shop and sell alcohol online. But you know, under the days of total lockdown, all these businesses somehow they start to, you know, survive. And in order to survive, you have to somehow do sales. So all of them, or well, not all of them, but majority of those small businesses, they started building those e-shops like really fast. I think that guys from Prohibicija beer company, they are importers, and they own a few bars. They operate a few bars in Vilnius that are focused on craft beer. They were probably the quickest company that did it. I think they built an e-shop in 4 days, if I'm right. I think they did it in 4 days, like complete solution from zero. Like the whole catalog of beer that they have already online, delivery sorted, everything. And I talked to them, and they're doing pretty good. They were the first ones in Lithuania that started doing this online tastings. So yeah, and everyone followed them and started building e-shops also. So we also, I think it took us almost 2 weeks to launch our web shop, and now it's on and operating. We deliver locally mostly, I mean within Lithuania, but we can also do it in Europe. But you just have to, we do it by request. You have to get in touch with us on Facebook or email or phone. It's totally doable. We did quite a few, we sent quite a few parcels to Europe by ourselves, but mostly the web shop that we have running now, it's focused on Lithuanian market. Yeah. But again, it's I mean, we do not sell as much as we used to before days of lockdown and virus. Of course, you
I have a question.
You cannot really expect that the situation is going to be the same, but at least we have something. Yeah. So
I have a question. Let's imagine that the situation is over. Then when will your new brewery and taproom will be opened, and when can we visit you the earliest?
Yeah. So I've been telling stories about the small brewery, but yeah, we had quite big plans for this year, and I'm not sure that definitely virus has impact on it in a really bad way now, because a few years back we bought a new location for brewery expansion, and it's really old historic warehouse in suburbs of Vilnius. And we had to do renovation on it, and we needed a lot of money for it because it's really huge in comparison to what we have today. As I mentioned, today we operate an 80 square meter building, and that building that we acquired is 1,000 square meters in total. And it was really old, and we had to start with changing the roof completely and blah, blah, blah. Basically the whole long story about it. And the normal official schedule was that we had to open it at the very end of April this year. So technically the last weekend, I think we were supposed to have the first event there, because I told you that it is 1,000 square meter building, but it doesn't mean that the brewery is going to occupy like the whole 1,000 square meters. At the moment we have 400 square meters planned for brewing purposes, and then the rest is the small tap room. And then the 600 meters that we're going to use as a venue for different events. You can rent it for your occasion. It's like really nice historical building. I can show you some pictures. Just wait a second. I have this really nice panoramic picture that I have around. Just give me a second. I'll put it on. Yeah, here you go. this is how it looks from the inside. So yeah, as you can see over there, we have a bar area, and it's supposed to be on already and operating. And I think that for last week, well, for past weekend, we had this event booked for like 600 people here. Some company wanted to celebrate their, I don't know, specific occasion with all their employees. But again, virus has fucked it up, and we had to skip it. They postponed it to autumn, I guess. So at the moment, well, we still do some construction here, and I don't know if everything is all right. Maybe we will be able to open it by the end of July. That's the schedule today. I can't tell you. Maybe it is going to change, because the whole situation is pretty unstable, and we're still. Well, we will see how it is, how it's going, after the lockdown and all that.
Yeah, but this new premise looks really cool. Of course, it's the panoramic view changes it a little bit in a cool way, but it looks very nice. And I understand it's like quite close to the center of Vilnius also.
Yeah, so the future, again, before the virus, the future looked really bright for us. And today I'm not 100% sure. But again, we try our best, because obviously we cannot really stop. The thing is, we already bought it. We already started the whole reconstruction here. We already invested a lot, and well, we cannot really stop.
There is no way back.
Yeah, there's no way back. We got to the point we cannot hit the pause button. It's already too late. We have to do it. We postpone it, but I'm pretty sure that we're going to finish it. Yeah.
What will be the capacity when you actually move to the new brewery?
Yeah. So I mean, it doesn't mean like a huge this new building. It doesn't mean huge expansion. At the moment, as far as I know, we acquired 4 more larger fermentation vessels, because at the moment we work with 1,000-liter fermentation vessels. We acquired a few more 2,000-liter vessels. So we're going to expand a little bit. Well, this a little bit is not just a little bit. I would say maybe twice. The fermentation capacity will be twice as much as we can do today. But again, as I told you, this whole building, it is going to serve not just brewery and tap room, but also as a venue. And we already had some events booked there. But again, this virus situation got in the way a little bit.
But at least you now have the room for expansion if you can, and if you have the possibility, right?
Yeah, and yeah, I think that relatively soon we will be moving the brewery here, because as you can see, well, it's maybe too difficult to see it over here, but the drain floor is already installed. We have everything set up for brewery, like electricity, water. You can basically move it in and start brewing almost. It's almost ready for brewing, yeah.
So maybe like for one of the final questions, like this will be one of the destinations for a beer traveler in Lithuania in the near future. But where else, like if somebody's interested in like basically like getting a good beer in Vilnius or in Kaunas, like where should they go?
One of my favorite places is, of course, Prohibicija bar in Vilnius city center. And there's this other good one called Beer Library, or Alaus Biblioteka in Lithuanian, which is also operated by guys from Prohibicija. Recently, they bought that company. Actually, it was under operation by some other people, but they acquired that company. And yeah, so these are places. If you are really focused on like modern beer, I would say, let's put it that way, like modern beer, modern craft. And at the very beginning of this show, we talked about countryside beers and this authentic brews. So if you're curious about it, I would go to Šnekutis. Šnekutis is a chain of 3 bars operating in Vilnius central area. So yeah, they are good at bringing those funky countryside beers to Vilnius twice a week in the high season. So you always drink them, well, as fresh as possible. This is really important with those countryside beers because they go stale really, really quickly.
But I guess, yeah, we already feel like an hour and a half with a good discussion. So I don't know, like maybe like if anybody who hasn't actually asked anything, maybe if they have any questions, we can still do that. But if not, then basically like, yeah, good luck, guys, with the new brewery. And yeah, we cannot wait until we can visit.
Yeah, thank you. And honestly, we'll need a lot of luck with it. As I told you, this whole situation is pretty unstable, but hopefully we're going to, figure it out.
Yeah,
thank you for this short overview of your own brewery and Lithuanian microbrewing right now. It was awesome, and I'm actually planning to spend some time in Vilnius this summer, so I had some good suggestions, and I hopefully can contact you if I have any kind of problems finding a good one or something. So.
Sure. Just feel free to drop me a text on Facebook, whatever, or email. You can find my email on our brewery website, which is sakiškės.lt, or Facebook. Yeah, feel free to get in touch. Yeah, I'll help you.
If you like basketball, then I'm going every once in a while. I go to Žalgiris games. So next time I will contact you if I am going.
Yeah, and there are actually some bars in Kaunas also, because some of the Žalgiris games are happening in Kaunas, right? There are good bars there. So yeah, just get in touch. I'll give you some.
As soon as it is possible again.
Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, thank you for logging and spending some time with me here this Friday evening.
Yeah, it has been a pleasure.
Yeah, and especially the weather is real nice outside. So yeah, I'm grateful that you spend your precious time with good weather outside here by your computer. So yeah.
We are also recording it, so those who have missed it can still watch it later.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So again, greetings from Vilnius, and thank you for making it real, for making it possible. Right.
Yeah, thank you, Gediminas.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care, man.
Thank you. Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.